Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We'll be starting in just 1 minute. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll be starting at 12:30, so just about, it's 12:30. So we will get started since we have a full 45 minutes of presentations for us today. So welcome. My name is Sabrina Subhit. This is the third webinar of our Consumer Food Waste webinar series. This series is part of a USDA grant that Ohio State University and Rutgers Cooperative Extension received to create a national consumer food waste community of practice. This monthly webinar series showcases the efforts of extension groups, university researchers, and other amazing leaders in the food and sustainability industry who are making significant strides in combating consumer food waste. Today, we are joined by Heather Latino and Hélène Lanctuit. Heather is an attorney and clinical instructor at Harvard Law School's Food Law and Policy Clinic. She is on the steering committee of the Zero Food Waste Coalition and serves as a co-chair of the State Food Waste Policy Working Group. Her work is centered on enhancing access to affordable, safe, and healthy foods by advocating for innovative measures and policy enforcements in nutrition assistance programs, food systems integration, food waste reduction, and food recovery. Hélène is the CEO of Share My Meals. She joined the board of Share My Meals in 2021, and she is the CEO since September 2023. She played a key role in developing operational and food safety processes for redistributing meals collected from large corporate cafeterias to nonprofit organizations. She proudly leads an expanding organization that recovers an average of 18,000 meals per month across the state of New Jersey. Most recently, she led the creation and the launch of the Meal Recovery Coalition, which I believe she'll be talking about today. So with that, I will pass it over to Heather to get us started.
Thanks so much, Sabrina. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And then before I get started, we'll just check in to make sure that you can see that.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk with everyone and share a little bit about the work that I do both at the clinic and at the Zero Food Waste Coalition. And I'm also really excited to get to hear more about the work that Hélène is doing and how it relates to some of the resources that we provide. So I want to start by just giving a brief introduction to the Food Law and Policy Clinic. For those of you who may not be familiar with it, just so that you have a sense of our mission and our areas of expertise and the work that we do. The Food Law and Policy Clinic is a clinical program that's housed in the Harvard Law School, which means that our primary goal is really to educate students about the role of law and policy in the food system. And one of the ways that we get to do this is by providing technical assistance and support to nonprofits, government agencies, and other types of organizations on a range of food policy issues while integrating students into that work. And we work across the 4 issue areas that you see here on the screen, but the bulk of our portfolio and our work is really in the food waste and recovery space. And to share a little bit about the Zero Food Waste Coalition, because a lot of our work has been focused in the food loss and waste space, we've also partnered together with a number of other organizations, including the Natural Resources Defense Council, the World Wildlife Fund, and ReFed, to form a coalition so that we could amplify the voices of the many organizations and the diversity of organizations that are working in this space. And so in May of 2023, we launched the Zero Food Waste Coalition, and the goal of the coalition is to influence policy at the local, state, and the federal levels to help reach the national goal of reducing food waste by half by the year 2030. And there are three primary ways that the coalition is working to achieve this goal, one of which is through engaging our members in policy advocacy. The second way is by providing a centralized repository of information and resources. And lastly, by coalition building. And currently we have more than 230 member organizations that are spread across 45 states. And with the limited time that we have together today, I'm going to focus on some of the state policy resources that we've developed to support your advocacy, including the resources that are linked here on the slide. And the slide deck will be shared with all of you after the presentation, and so the links are embedded to all of these resources throughout the presentation. And if anybody wants them, like on today's presentation, feel free to let me know, and I can also drop them in the chat after I'm done speaking if that would be your preference. But before we dive into those resources, I wanted to start by just talking about like why state policy. So I said today, like I want to focus on state policy. Why? And the reason that I want to talk about state policy is because first, it can be really hard to get things done at the federal level, especially given some of the things that we've seen in Congress over the past few years, where it's really difficult to get movement. And for those of you who might be tracking, you may have even seen, like with respect to the Farm Bill, which is a large omnibus piece of legislation that governs like large portions of our food and agricultural system. We've been working for 2 years to get that bill over the finish line, and it hasn't happened yet. So first, state policy can be a faster way to make progress and make movement. And second, state policy in states are a great place to innovate and test policies to see how they'll work before they're rolled out at a more national level. And what we've seen is that there's been a lot of momentum around state food waste policies in the past few years. Here on the slide, you can see that in 2023, legislators in 23 states introduced more than 90 unique bills that were targeted at preventing and reducing food waste in their communities. And expect that when I pull the numbers for 2024, we're going to see similar trends. So to help engage with state policy, I want to share with you some of the resources that the clinic and our partners and the coalition have developed to support state policy advocacy. And I want to start first with the Food Waste Legislative Tracker. This is a resource that was developed by Divert in partnership with the Zero Food Waste Coalition and with the clinic. And what it does is it provides a summary of pending legislation with links to proposed bills, and it also helps track any action that's taken on the bill. And I'll show you just a screenshot of what that tracker looks like so that you have a sense. You can see like it breaks it down by state, provides a link to the bill so that you can click on it for additional information, breaks it down by the category of what type of topic it deals with, and then includes a summary of the information. And you can look by state or you can look by topics. The topics are at the bottom, so like broken down by organic waste bans, edible food recovery, organic waste by product procurement or date labeling, or you can look at what's happening in your state. And our hope is that by having this sort of information accessible, that it's easier for stakeholders to weigh in on pending legislation in their state and to identify innovative policies that are being considered by other states that they might be able to champion in their own communities. The second resource that I wanted to share with you, for any of you who may not be familiar with it, is the Refed Policy Finder. This is a tool which you might gather by its title. It was developed by ReFed, and the clinic helps to support it by providing the underlying research. But what the ReFed Policy Finder does is it's a tool to help you understand existing laws that are on the books. So while the legislative tracker that I just mentioned above is a resource to look at what sorts of bills are being considered and proposed, this Policy Finder helps you understand what currently exists. And the way that it works is it's an interactive map of food waste prevention, food rescue, and organic waste recycling policies. And one of the things that's really helpful is it also helps you assess the strength of those policies so that you can see how the laws in your state compare to those in other states. So for example, here on the slide, you can see which states have enacted tax incentives to incentivize food donation by providing state-level tax credits. And the states in gray are those that have no state-level tax incentives in place, while the states in green do have tax incentives in place. And then you can see California is highlighted in dark green, and that's because it's a state that has a really strong tax incentive. Not only does it provide a tax credit for the value of food that's donated, but it's unique in that it also provides a credit for the cost of transporting and handling food donations, which makes it kind of stand out from some of the other states that have policies in place. To get additional detail on any policy or the policies in any state, you can click on the state and it'll take you to a summary of the relevant laws. And it has links to those laws and regulations as well. And the hope is that this tool will help individual stakeholders, coalitions identify weaknesses, gaps, or opportunities to strengthen their state laws. The third resource that I want to cover is the State Policy Toolkit. This expands on the information that's available on the ReFed Policy Finder. As I mentioned, the ReFed Policy Finder has some policies. It has a total of 6 policies that it covers. In contrast, the toolkit looks at 15 different types of policy opportunities to reduce food loss and waste at the state level, which are organized into the 6 buckets that you see here on the screen. And the way that the toolkit's organized is that it starts with those policies that are intended to deter food waste by making it more expensive or prohibiting the disposal of food waste, like organic waste bans. And the toolkit also covers how some jurisdictions have incorporated food donation requirements into those organic waste bans. The toolkit then goes on to cover the suite of policies that we think are really helpful in promoting food donation, things like liability protections, tax incentives, and food safety guidance. And then it goes on to other topics like animal feed as a recycling option, preventing food waste by fixing date labels, and then concludes with ways in which the government can lead by example, such as having strong food waste policies in schools, like share tables or composting of food scraps, by incorporating food loss and waste in climate action plans or other types of planning like solid waste planning, or by providing grants or other types of government support for things like food recovery. And for each policy that we cover in the toolkit, we give some context for the policy. So there's a description of existing federal law in that space. And then we talk about what best practices and important considerations have been learned from other states that have enacted similar policies. And lastly, we include draft language that can be minimally modified and used by you or by legislators to make it easier to propose new policies in other states or to be able to take strong policies and replicate them in your jurisdiction. So for example, like taking the California tax incentive policy, being able to easily lift that language if you want to enhance your state tax credit or create a new one. And so I'm just going to quickly give you an overview using organic waste bans as an example. organic waste bans with food donation requirements as an example. So here you can see kind of some of the learnings that have been developed on the screen from like our look at what other states have done across the United States. And one thing that I think is interesting is that California's law is very, very brief, but the accompanying regulations make up for it in length. The law in California that has the food donation mandate is really a climate bill at its core. And what it did was to set a food recovery target of 20%, so that 20% of all edible food that would have otherwise gone to landfills was instead being donated. And you can see here that one of the best practices that we lift up is applying a phased-in approach. One of the things that California did was created tiers of entities that would have to comply with the regulations mandating food donations, with one tier of businesses starting in 2022. And those were typically businesses that dealt more with produce or fresh groceries, shelf-stable foods. And then a second tier of producers that wouldn't have to comply until 2024. And those were producers that were handling more prepared foods, which generally requires somewhat more careful handling. You can see that one of the other things is to include grant funding in California. Since 2018, CalRecycle has awarded more than $28 million in grant funding to 97 different food recovery projects. And that's resulted in nearly 250 million meals being recovered and redistributed to populations in need. And the last thing that I'll note is that California's law is statewide, but there are specific requirements that are implemented at the local level. So in California, cities and counties are responsible for providing education to generators, helping to facilitate the connections between food waste generators and food rescue organizations, and assessing capacity for those rescue operations. So that gives you kind of an idea of the type of information that you might find in the toolkit. On the screen is a QR code to access the toolkit. And like I mentioned before, the link is embedded in the presentation as well. And the last resource that I want to share with all of you is a climate pollution reduction grant tracker. This resource was developed in partnership with the FarmLink Project and the Zero Food Waste Coalition. And what we did was create a toolkit and a tracker to make it easier for our members to engage with the agencies in their jurisdictions that are creating climate action plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and other harmful air pollutants. The Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program is being administered by the Environmental Protection Agency, and it is working to support states, local governments, tribes, and territories as they create and implement climate action plans. And this work is being done in two phases. The first phase was that jurisdictions were compiling and submitting to the EPA priority climate action plans. And they submitted those last March. And those were action plans that could really prioritize like projects that were ready to implement and would have immediate short-term impacts on greenhouse gas. Now jurisdictions are in the kind of second phase of this program in that they're developing comprehensive climate action plans. And those plans will set out both short and long-term plans for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And they'll be looking at the waste sector. Given the role that food waste plays in methane production, we've been encouraging stakeholders to advocate for the inclusion of food waste in these plans. And the toolkit and tracker is to help equip you to engage with local agencies to ensure that the plans don't overlook food waste or food recovery more specifically. So the toolkit has sample talking points and an outreach email that can be used to reach out to the state agencies that are working on these plans. And then the tracker allows you to see if your jurisdiction has included food waste in its priority climate action plan. Some did, but some did not. And if it did, what sorts of food waste policies and programs your jurisdiction was planning to prioritize, so you can see whether or not you think they're targeting the right things. And then it also tracks opportunities to provide feedback. So it has the state website or local jurisdiction website for the agency that's responsible for developing these. If there are meetings or opportunities to provide feedback, we're pulling those and populating this, the grant tracker with that information as well. And we think that this is really important because I expect that these climate action plans are going to shape state and local policies and funding priorities for years to come. So would encourage any of you who haven't engaged to take a look at engage in that process. And I just want to wrap up by saying that I hope that you'll check out some of these resources or any of them that are new to you. I hope that they'll be useful as you're thinking about or advocating for supportive food waste policies in the communities where you live and work. And if you have ideas about how these resources can be improved or other resources that might be useful, please reach out. My email address is on the screen, along with the URL for the Zero Food Waste Coalition site, which is where most of these resources are housed. And you can also learn more about being a member there if that's something that's of interest to you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Helen so that she can talk about some of the ways that she's been interacting with and engaging in these resources and her work more broadly. Thank you so much. And please, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or jump in now before Helen takes over.
Good afternoon, everyone. Maybe we keep the questions for later because I saw you had a couple in the chat already, Heather.
Okay, thank you.
So let me share my screen. Can you all see the slide?
Yes, you're good.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us, Rutgers Cooperative Extension. It's an honor for me to be speaking to you all and to present our program and our initiative. Share My Meals is a food rescue organization based out of New Jersey, and today we're only active in New Jersey, and we focus on the recovery of prepared food and meals in particular. As most of the food rescue organizations, we are addressing the two issues of food insecurity and food waste. New Jersey is no different from the rest of the US, with an average of about 10% of the population being food insecure. And as also in the rest of the US, food waste is a major issue, as I guess you all know, with about 40% of all food produced that is uneaten or unconsumed. What I want to point out here is that we're looking at specifically on the prepared food segment, which is about 20% of this amount, really massive amount. And obviously this has very different causes. We know that food, plate waste is pretty high among our consumers. But what we, Share My Meals, wanted to focus on is prepared food, a surplus happening at the food service sector. So where a lot of food is prepared to feed many either employees or students. So we're working mainly in large campuses. And in terms of food insecurity, because we're providing food insecure people with prepared food, what we're looking at is providing them with the right nutrition. So we're looking at, providing balanced meal that has all components, and so yeah, supporting them with the right type of nutrition. In a nutshell, this is how our process looks like. Recovering we ask the chefs and the kitchen employees to prepare the trays and to put them in those reusable trays that basically are large enough for a family of 4. Our volunteers come and pick up the meals and deliver to nonprofit organizations providing meals to people in need, or directly to families. And you will see we have different programs. I wanted to show it with nicer pictures. This is really how it looks like in the kitchen. It provides a lot of joy to the food service employees, not to have to throw this great food that they have prepared with love anymore. I mean, and the norm is in too many places still the trash. What we want to show here is that it's possible to recover this food safely. And this is really what we have put in place at Share My Meals, is a process that can reassure our food service providers or any kitchen employees that these meals are handled safely and reach people in need very rapidly. So this is what's unique about our program. I mean, meal recovery is not new, and I'm happy to hear more and more examples of it. What we have developed is a process that also addresses packaging waste at the same time. That is another large issue. And you see, we're using reusable trays that, by the way, hold the technology that we also have developed. So in each of those trays, you have a barcode, and each individual meal is tracked from donation to delivery, so that the time at which those meals are out of temperature control is measured. And basically, by design, our processes and our routes are made very short, so that the food doesn't stay out of temperature control for more than 1 hour. So the technology, because we are managing unpredictability at all times, we know where we're going to recover the meals from, but we never know how many. Then the system allows us to allocate the meals to the organizations that need them, understanding their needs, but also allocate them to the nearest point of consumption, so that the routes could be designed very short and managed very shortly. I mentioned that our processes are volunteer-led. So the volunteers are also using the app that we've developed to hear about the routes and to sign up. All the communication with them, but also the food donors and the nonprofit partners, are managed through the technology. And the last point, the technology allows us for the tracking, as I mentioned, but also full reporting of the data, giving data back to our food donors, for example, in terms of number of meals that we've recovered from their site in real time, the corresponding weight of food waste that has been diverted from the landfill, and the number of people fed. So this data is very valuable to those companies and corporations. And here I just wanted to show you a snapshot of who we're working with. This is not showing them all, but we've been able to develop strong partnership with the food service providers, and Sodexo's and Eurest Compass Group, so that we've been able to develop processes that fits their needs, which was the most important, because obviously we are protected by liability exemptions, but doesn't mean that we shouldn't take particular care to the processes. So we've been able to develop the process that fits their needs. Now we're working with large corporations, but also hospitals, universities, and now private schools that actually do create a lot of surplus meals out of their cafeteria. We engage the staff as volunteers as well, which is part of the proposition. As we're recovering from those corporations, they value the possible engagement. They care about the impact that they have on their community. The environmental impact is important, but it's small compared to their overall corporation impact. What's very important for them is the social impact that they have. So being able to regularly have an impact with their own neighbors is really, really important. So we offer those corporate volunteering programs And it makes sense operationally, to be honest, to send people that are already on site and that would just take half hour of their time from work to go down to the cafeteria, pick up the meals and deliver them to a nearby organization. So we have 3 different programs. We've started Share My Meals, I didn't mention, at the end of 2021 with a direct-to-family program. We are based out of Princeton, and we were serving families in the Princeton area. This is just a fantastic way of being connected. And what I want to point out here is that we're not just providing food, we're providing prepared meals that can just be reheated. So most people we serve are working poors, working sometimes 2-3 jobs, not having the time to go to food banks, not having the time to go and source for the ingredients. So we bring a lot more than just a meal. We save them time and we save them stress. So that we have fantastic testimonials showing that those direct to families, but also the workplace model, basically delivering meals to the place that they go to, the place where they work, the place where they go and pick up their kids, is so important. However, this requires a lot of volunteers and a lot of coordination. So we do send a majority of our meals to nonprofit organizations that do have the relationship with their recipients, which allow us to deliver much more many meals to one location. But I'm very keen on developing and keep this contact with the recipients with the 2 other programs. So these are our impact numbers. I mentioned that because we're tracking every individual meals, we can measure those data very closely. We've been able to double since we started, starting with very small amount. And the technology has enabled us to grow exponentially without growing the team substantially. Hopefully, we'll double again next year. This is, however, just the beginning. It's not so much when you look at what other big organizations could rescue. But again, this is only meals, and it's actual number of meals that we're measuring and not pounds of food converted into an equivalent number of meals. I want to talk about the initiative that we launched this year in New Jersey. It's called the Meal Recovery Coalition. We've estimated through a study that we've done that about 5 million meals are being wasted every year in New Jersey from the food service sector and from the catering sector. These are data that we generated, and if you remember well, we will reach 130,000 meals this year. So we have a lot more to do and a lot more to achieve. So this year we'll have recovered 2% of this amount, and hopefully by doubling again next year it will be 5%. So we realized that we needed to do a lot more if we wanted to reach those 5 million, and this is why the coalition was created to basically use the power of our partners, and especially our corporate partners, to bring visibility to the solution and to those 2 issues that we're addressing. So let me talk to you a little bit about the coalition's objectives and how it's supporting our objectives to reach to those 5 million meals. The original idea was really to create a public-private partnership. So Heather mentioned what other states are doing, and some states like California are really advanced. New Jersey is not so advanced. So we needed to find alternative routes, more like initiatives to grow while the institutions were hopefully developing more regulations to enable food recovery to happen at scale. So we've contacted our corporate partners, but also New Jersey government, the public side, like more county sides, but also other governance sides to join the effort. This also obviously is an initiative that supports our growth financially because we needed much more pull to achieve our goals. Right now we have 7 members that you see here, recruiting more. Hopefully we will double the amount of members next year. New Jersey Economic Development Authorities are our main sponsor on the public side. And we are lucky to be supported also by the Office of the Food Security Advocate, which is a new state agency that was created a couple of years ago that is very specific to New Jersey. And so this is a great help because their mission is to support the coordination of the efforts to tackle food insecurity. So we have set ourselves a number of goals with the overall ambition to make meal recovery the norm in New Jersey. What we want is really raising awareness. First of all, as I mentioned, I think this is key. We've realized that even our corporate members were not so much aware of the issues of food insecurity or the impact of food waste. So just talking about those was important, but talking about meal recovery as a complementary food source of food. Also for the food distributors, the last mile agencies like food banks to understand that meals also could be part of their solution. Even if it's perishable food, it needed to be managed differently, but could be part of the solution, and that it could be done at scale and not stay niche like it is today. We could only do this by fostering collaboration, and there's a lot of work that we have in front of us, especially to align on guidelines and standards, which I will talk about in a minute, with the objective to really create a scalable model. So again, meal recovery does exist already, but this coordinated effort, taking together corporations and the private and the public sector to give a push to meal recovery is new. And this is this model that we want to put forward throughout with the coalition. So we've, based on those, out of those goals, we've defined subcommittees and work that really we're going to have to prioritize in 2025. And here I'll just give you some examples of what was outlined, especially on the alignment of standards and alignment of standards related to the distribution, because again, this is going to be key to send those meals to the right places to make sure that those meals could be managed correctly. On the strategic side, and the advocacy element is really important, but also on the development side and fundraising to recruit more members, but also access other sources of funding. And I wanted to highlight where us being part of the Zero Food Waste Coalition has been so important for us. And how we've been able to use the tools that Heather was describing to really define the work, first of all, but really trying to understand what was actionable and what was possible. Because understanding what other states are doing was really important for us to set the bar and say, well, this is actually possible. So in terms of aligning on standards here, I'm talking about describing how meal recovery has to be done to stay safe, but also to be efficient. And we've used the state policy toolkit to look at best practice, but also in terms of advocacy, what was missing in New Jersey, and what above meal recovery, that's definitely looking at food donation, what needed to be what could be the low-hanging fruits really in terms of regulations that could support higher donations. So we're regularly looking at the legislative tracker and the ReFed policy finder. Just want to give you an example of the information that I found really useful out of the policy toolkit. Looking at the appendix and the basically draft of regulations that could be proposed in every state. There's already language that has been developed on the recovery of service food and prepared food. And it really supported our work in getting access to even more food, especially from the catering sector, where as long as the food has been maintained safe, in temperature control, but also out of contamination, this food could be recovered. And I know it's being done elsewhere, but in New Jersey, everybody was telling us you cannot recover this food. So we're talking to our partners in terms of what processes they could implement to make sure that, yes, this food has been kept safely and that more of this food could be recovered because, to be honest, today it's 0%. And I'm telling them, even if we could just get 10% of that, that would be already a lot of meals that would be recovered. So we're really looking at this language, and we'll work with with the power of our members. Hopefully, they have a lot of knowledge in like state government affairs and a lot of connections to support us proposing new bills and new regulations. So very useful work. And I took the example that Heather showed before on the tax incentives. For me, this is another very strong route for New Jersey to push, especially to support the costs of food recovery. Today, there is nothing in New Jersey, and implementing state incentives would really support that. And again, looking at the tracker of what bills have been proposed, and what we need to put our efforts behind is really key. Last but not least, I want to say the coalition really allows us to network and meet our peers and discuss best practice and make new friends, really. So thank you very much. I don't know if you have any questions. If you need more information about us, you could go to the mealrecoverycoalition.org website, but don't hesitate to contact me as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hélène and Heather, for a wonderful presentation and sharing so many great resources with us. Just a few things before we maybe make time for one or two questions. Our next webinar in this webinar series is going to be on January 13th. It's a Monday. It will be on food safety and storage. We have a registration link for you all that is now in the chat. If you're interested in joining our community of practice, I will also put that link in the chat now. A recording for this webinar and the webinar slides will be sent out via email, and I'll also send out the January link through your emails as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A. Since we only have about 3 minutes left, if we can't get to any of the questions that you might have, please feel free to email myself, Heather, or Hélène, and we'll be sure to answer your questions. So we have one chat from Paisley Gallagher. Her question here says, what are our options for community-based small-scale composting solutions? Do we have a toolkit for these policies and solutions?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Paisley. There are some policies in the toolkit that talk about composting, that the toolkit covers things like permitting and zoning for composting facilities and creating end markets for compost, which may be a little bit focused on like a larger scale than you're referring to. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat to a model municipal zoning ordinance and community composting policy that was put together by the Natural Resources Defense Council and the Environmental Law Institute that I think might be more tailored at what you're interested in. And I'm not sure that I can post to everyone. So let me see if, oh, here we go. Okay, so there's the link to that resource. The other thing, as you pointed out, Paisley, that there's often an issue with contamination, which is a very real problem in terms of scaling these programs. One of the things that the U.S. Department of Agriculture is attempting to do, actually, sorry, let me take that back. It's the Environmental Protection Agency is attempting to do is to roll out a large-scale education program. And so they issued a grant a call for grants for a consumer recycling education and outreach grant. And those applications are due the end of this week. And so hopefully we'll start to see some like larger national scale programs that would help at least with some of the like education that would go behind reducing levels of contamination.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. Like we will try to make time for just one more question here. Let's see. How can we prevent edible food from going to composting?
Also, really important question, and I love how you tie it to the wasted food scale, because I think a lot of the education that we're doing, including around the climate pollution reduction grants, is trying to get policymakers and folks to focus on like how do we ensure that food is redirected to people so that they're eating it, rather than focusing on end-of-life solutions like what's happening at a landfill and how we're capturing methane gas. Like those are the least efficient solutions. So I think part of it is like seeing where you can engage, for example, in a climate action plan to lift up the importance of food recovery and how that can have a really powerful impact on methane, but it's by recovering food, not by dealing with it at the landfill.
Great, thank you. So it is 1:15. So we will end the webinar here. Daniela Lopez, I want to acknowledge that I do see your hand raised. Since we don't have time to answer your question, please feel free to email me and I will get your question to whoever we need to. Now, thank you all for joining us, and we hope to see you next month on January 13th for our food safety and storage webinar. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.